Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode 8 of Sorgi and Friends. You know me, I'm Anthony Sorgi, your host. Nick Masterpolito alongside here, the president of Carroll Sports Media, and third co-host today, his camera's loading, is Mr. Ryan Sullivan, the co-president of WSJP, who at the conclusion of our interview will be talking about Cheez-Its because I don't know why, but he wants to. But we have a very special guest, gentlemen. This man is a writer for Big Five Hoops, and he is the author of A Soaring Season. Mr. Aaron Bracy, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you guys.
Before I get into my first question, I just have to say our Ryan and I's colleague and friend, John Classy, sends his regards. He would be here if he was not currently in Italy.
John's a great guy, longtime friend of the family, and soon to be Eagle Scout, and great guy. You guys do such a great job, and you guys do such a great job at St. Joe's Prep with sports broadcasting. So really a pleasure to be with you guys today.
Likewise here. I guess just
Thank you.
To get into the book, I'll be honest, I have not read it, but I've heard a ton about it, and I plan on buying it soon to read before the summer wraps up. Just like before I get into some ins and out questions, give a kind of brief description of someone who maybe has never heard of it, about just what the book's about and what people should know if they're considering buying it.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. The book is about the backdrop of the book is the 2003-04 St. Joseph's basketball team, which featured Jameer Nelson and Delonte West as the backcourt. Jameer Nelson ended up being the player of the year in Division I that year. Phil Martelli was the head coach, ended up being the coach of the year. And both Jameer and Delonte ended up being first-round NBA draft picks. But the story of the book is St. Joe's was kind of an underdog program in many ways. The players were under-recruited. Their gym was not as nice as St. Joe's Prep's gym in many ways. Probably a similar size, though. And but everything came together for that team. They went 27-0 in the regular season. They were the number one ranked team in the country. They were the number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament. And they were a wild, broken play, last second shot by Oklahoma State from going to the Final Four. And it's a basketball story, but it's more than a basketball story. It's a story of the capability of the human spirit and what human beings can do when they work together, they work hard, they have great leaders, and they believe in themselves and each other. And so it's a sports story, but it's much, for me anyway, I was inspired by the story, whether it's sports or not. And I've gotten some great feedback, and really looking forward to you guys having a chance to read it, and your listeners as well. So it was a great journey.
Absolutely. Nick?
Absolutely. Well, I guess I'll get into the ins and outs of things as Anthony was about to do. But, what really goes into writing a book that people don't see behind the scenes?
The cliche is blood, sweat, and tears. And, Nick, there was a lot of that and a lot of lack of sleep. But for me, it was a passion. It was something that I always wanted to do. This is my first book. I dreamed of being a sports writer when I was in high school, your guys' age. I would read the Philadelphia Inquirer. Bill Lyon was a columnist then. He was kind of the guy that I wanted to be like. And I wanted to be a sports writer, and I thought that to be a good writer, I needed to read good books. So I began reading the top 100 Sports Illustrated books of all time, sort of one by one, and really to help me become what I would hope to be a good writer. And as I read these books, I was like, wow, I really would love to write a book one day. And as I was doing this for so many years, I really either didn't have the time or didn't have the topic to really write a book. And so finally I thought what I thought was a pretty good topic, and I had a little bit more time. And I just put my head down, and it's just a lot of work. It's hard work. It's like anything else. If you want to be successful or doing anything, I don't think, Nick, there's really any secret it just took a lot of time and a lot of hard work, to be honest.
Absolutely.
I do want to circle back to the team just a second here. At the end of the day, obviously this meant a lot for the city of Philadelphia and basketball within it. If you could talk about that, that would be great. And also, why hasn't St. Joe's been able to live up to the hype and that team ever since?
Those are two great questions, Ryan. First of all, you guys were not born yet, but that team really captivated the city of Philadelphia in a way that is unusual for college teams, particularly in Philadelphia. With 6 Division I teams, it's a kind of a split fandom. So usually, Villanova makes its run. All the Villanova people get wild about Villanova. Under John Chaney, Temple made many runs. Temple people would get wild about Temple. LaSalle had its time in the early 90s and even before I was born where they did really well and similar. But this team captivated the entire city and also professional sports fans. And not just that, they captivated the entire country. This was the number one story in college basketball for basically the second half of the month of February and into March as they pursued the undefeated regular season. And I think in many ways, people were captivated by the story. Jameer Nelson's 5'11". St. Joe's played in a gym. Phil Martelli was kind of this, not super polished, didn't dress like maybe some of the best coaches, wasn't the quote unquote best looking, or maybe didn't talk. He had that Philadelphia accent, but people were captivated by what many consider just like kind of regular people that were doing extraordinary things. And so the city became enamored with this team. In fact, I interviewed Philadelphia Daily News college basketball writer Dick Girardi for the book. He was a great resource. And he said in all the years that he covered Philadelphia sports and basketball, this was the number one story that he covered, and it wasn't even close. And he covered Villanova's national championship teams in 2016 and 2018. Obviously great teams and great stories, but there was just something about this St. Joe's team that captivated people in a little bit of a different way. And to your second point, Ryan, about why they haven't been able to kind of follow up on that, I think it sort of speaks to how amazing what they did was, because it's just not easy for a school like St. Joseph's to become nationally ranked in the top 25, let alone a number one team in the country. So Phil Martelli told me that he tried, after that season, that was his model for what he wanted his teams to be like in many ways. And he had a lot of success at St. Joseph's, the most wins in school history. He went to several more NCAA tournaments. In fact, the following year, the team went to the NIT final without Jameer, without Delonte. But I think it speaks to the challenge of a school like St. Joseph's. And also, I think it also speaks to the amazing season that team had and what they were able to accomplish.
All right. Sorgi.
I want to ask about Coach Martelli, because obviously Ryan and I both know that walking through the halls at St. Joe's Prep, his name is there. And seeing what he's done post-coaching, just the type of guy he is, but also the great coach he was at SJU and elsewhere. Can you talk about just the type of guy he is for people who maybe aren't very sure of kind of who he is personally?
I think I can sum it up in a story that I'm going to tell you. I went to St. Joseph's, and I mentioned that I wanted to be a sports writer. So I started out working for the student newspaper and the student radio station, much in the same way that you guys are doing. And the first game that I ever covered was for the student radio station. Now, St. Joseph's student radio station at the time, this was 1995. There was no streaming. The signal on campus, if everything was working properly, the signal would reach the cafeteria. So basically, if you were in the cafeteria eating, you might be listening to the St. Joseph's student radio station. So the listenership was maybe like 1 or 2 people. So that's just to put in context. So my first game that I did was at the University of Delaware, the first game of the 1995 season. It was also Phil Martelli's first ever game as a head coach at St. Joseph's. and they won that game. And the following day, I figured, well, I'm doing what I wanted to do. I was broadcasting, not writing, but I was in sports journalism. And I thought, well, what would Bill Lyon do, the guy that I read? He would go talk to the coach the next day after the game. So I went to Phil Martelli's office at the field house, and I encountered his secretary, Claire Ariano, and I said, hi, I'm Aaron Bracy from the St. Joseph Sports radio station. I'm here to interview Coach Phil Martelli about the game against Delaware. And she said, okay. She said, do you have an appointment? And I said, do I need one? She said, hold on. So she left and she came back and she said, okay, Phil, we'll see you in a couple minutes. So, and I've told Phil this before, I don't remember anything that we talked about, but to this day, I still remember the feeling of being in his office talking about the game, and it reinforced that this is what I really want to do. And I told him that, like, I don't know that I would not have pursued sports journalism had you turned me down. But the fact that you said yes to me and the fact that I got to interview you, and he was like the first person that I interviewed who wasn't like I did this in high school when I would interview the high school, like you guys do, the high school players, the coaches, but I never really interviewed sort of a college or professional player or coach before. And I told him that experience and the feeling that I got reinforced that, hey, this is what I really want to do. So that kind of sums up a little bit of the kind of person that he is. He always makes time for everybody. In fact, that season, he would always say yes to interview requests. They didn't change who they were. And he's extremely accommodating. And I talked a lot about him in the book and the impact that he had on the school, the players. And to this day, a quick example, and I'm rambling a bit, but I want to give this quick example. On that team was a player named Robert Hartshorn, who you've probably never heard of. Most people haven't. He was their last player on the bench. He was a former cheerleader, and he walked onto the team. He was very athletic, and he walked on the team. He was a good practice player. And to this day, him and Phil Martelli maintain like a father-son type friendship. And in the book, Robert Hartshorn says, what coach has a relationship like that with the last player on their bench? So I think those are a couple stories that encapsulates, for me, who Phil Martelli is as a person, more than a coach. We didn't even talk about his coaching.
Absolutely. Well, you've been able to cover Philadelphia sports for nearly 30 years now. What has that experience been like thus far?
It's been awesome, Nick. It's really what I've always wanted to do, and I've had the opportunity to do it. It's interesting. I've really seen changes in the way journalism happens. When I started, there were still newspapers. I worked at newspapers. We were actually putting out a print product that people actually read and subscribed to. I worked in a newsroom. I got to experience working with veteran journalists who really taught me a lot about reporting and writing and editing. And then I've also kind of transitioned into this newer world where much of journalism is social media, podcasts, which this is great that you guys are doing this. And so I've tried to adapt as best I can and try and roll with the times. And it's different today. It's I wouldn't say any better or worse. I certainly don't want to sound like the guy on the lawn who would say, oh, it's so much better. It's just different. And I think there is a place for journalism, for sports journalism, because people love reading about sports. They love finding out what the players think after the game. But I've had so many wonderful experiences, met so many wonderful people, and really blessed and grateful for all the opportunities.
And yeah, if I could probably talk about the book all day. My grandfather was telling me all about the history of St. Joe's, but I want to pick your brain a little bit as a writer, broadcaster, etc. Obviously, when you're writing an article, you got a lot of things to talk about, a lot of stories, a lot of storylines. But for you, how do you really break the article down into focusing on a specific storyline?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Ryan. That was one of the challenges of the book. I did so much research. I interviewed 90 people. and I had so much material, and it was kind of overwhelming in a way. And what I did was I'm kind of old school. I like to use paper and pen in many ways. And I kind of hand wrote out an outline for how I thought the book could go as far as chapters. And once I kind of had an outline of the chapters, I then took all of the material and I started kind of putting them into what I called buckets. I actually, on my desktop of my computer, I would call it chapter 1 bucket, chapter 2 bucket. And I would take all of my information that I thought could fit into that chapter and put it in a bucket. And it kind of in some ways was like doing a jigsaw puzzle where, like, you know, maybe you have like the rainbow all over there and the car parts all over here. And so once I was able to organize that, I felt better, and I felt like I was able to move forward a little more quickly. And then for the individual chapters, I worked similarly. I would outline each chapter by hand. And once I had the chapter outline, things would start flowing. Believe it or not, and I've said this before, and this might not come across in the way you would think, but the actual writing of the book, when I was writing the story, in some ways that was like the easiest part. The planning and the editing and the research and the interviews and the transcribing in some ways was a little bit more challenging. I felt like once I had everything and I kind of had a vision of what I wanted each chapter to look like, I felt like the story kind of flowed. And I'm not going to say it necessarily wrote itself, but in some ways I feel like it just kind of flowed. And really in many ways is because of all the people who gave me their time, and they gave me so much insight and so much interesting information. And I was able to combine that with the research and marry it. And it just felt natural. So that was kind of my process for the book. And in all honesty, that's kind of my process for any story that I do, it just on a much smaller scale.
Were you able to use everything in the book, like all the interviews? Like, did everybody get a say in the final writing?
I interviewed 90 people. I think I had all but one person was captured in the book in some way or form. And I had to cut a lot of stuff just because of space, but I used probably 75% of the material that I had from interviews, maybe even a little more. My goal was 100,000 words. I think I wrote like maybe 105,000, but I didn't want to go too far because I know like one of the challenges today is finding time to read. And I didn't want the book to be like too long, but I wanted it to be long enough that it wasn't just like flipping through a few pages. And so I structured the book too in a way where I feel like you could kind of pick up the book in any place. And if you don't have a lot of time, you could kind of skip around and jump around. Because I also was thinking about, you know, people don't have time today to read books like maybe when life was less busy, I guess.
Sorgi.
I want to go to a way that you described the book and excuse me, the team, which you said it was guard oriented. That feels so much like the Philadelphia Catholic League, in that the guards are the scorers, the guards are who dominate the game. Can you talk about maybe just that comparison there and the similarity?
Well, absolutely. And as you know, Phil Martelli was a product of the Philadelphia Catholic League at St. Joseph's Prep. He grew up at the Palestra watching double headers of both the city championship, the Catholic League, the Big Five. And he coached at Kennedy Kendrick in Norristown for his first 7 years of coaching when he was a young coach in the Philadelphia Catholic League. So as you guys know, Philadelphia is guards. Philadelphia is known for guards. That's the style of play. And in many ways, you know, I think it was kind of a little bit out of necessity as well. We mentioned, Nick asked before, or Ryan asked before, why St. Joseph's kind of hasn't been able to get back to that plateau. And one of the reasons is it's hard. There are the talented big men, there are fewer and far between. There are more talented guards just because of genetics, just because of size. But the most talented big men tend to go to Power 5 conferences. So they don't necessarily go to St. Joseph's, but there are a lot of guards that are really good. And so obviously Jameer Nelson was the best player in the country that year. He was under recruited because of his size. Delonte West was under recruited kind of for some unknown reasons, but he ended up being a great tandem with Jameer. And St. Joseph's ended up playing 4 guards in their starting lineup. And it was a really unique style. Like today, it's so common to see teams launch like 23 pointers in a game. But back then it wasn't. And St. Joseph's in many ways created a model for how to play. And in fact, in the book, I interviewed Jay Wright, Villanova's former coach for the book. And he said that the way St. Joseph's played, and particularly the way Jameer played, really helped kind of set the table for what Villanova was building. They played that year. Jay Wright was in his 3rd season at Villanova. He did not have a winning record in any of his 3 seasons, but they played St. Joe's really tough in 2004. And Jay Wright said that him and his players learned a lot from that game. And they went on to play kind of a similar style with players who were Power 5 conference recruits, and they went on to win a couple national championships. Now, obviously, Jay Wright and Villanova deserve all the credit for that. But the St. Joseph's model proved to be a model that can be successful. And really, it was kind of that's what Phil Martelli knew from growing up. Guards were more available in the Atlantic 10 than big men. And it was just a style that fit that team. And they were really successful playing that way. And, the one chapter in the book that I really that was really kind of insightful and surprising to me was St. Joseph's went up to play at St. Bonaventure that year. And in the crowd was the women's basketball coach at St. Bonaventure, Jim Crowley. I had no idea about this story, but and it's much more in the book. I'm not going to go into that much detail for time's sake, but Jim Crowley watched St. Joseph's play, and he said, that's the kind of team that I want to build for my women's team. And it took him a little while, but he built a team in a similar vein to that St. Joseph's team. And his team ended up winning the Atlantic 10, going to the NCAA Sweet 16, and being one of the best women's basketball teams in St. Bonaventure history. It was a really cool perspective that Jim Crowley gave me, and totally unexpected until I talked to him.
Absolutely. And Sorgi, I'm going to ask for your permission here to just shoot out 2 questions. If that's okay with you. I appreciate that, Anthony. So while I was, I guess not researching stuff for this interview, I came across an article that it looks like you wrote about the Philadelphia Phillies taking on the Milwaukee Brewers, and it was posted in the MLB app. And I just thought that was so cool. Right. So I just wanted to know how that felt for you.
Yeah. So I've been doing this for a long time. I've written for a lot of different outlets. I started my career working for the Associated Press when I was at St. Joseph's, and I still work for the Associated Press today as a freelancer. I work for several different newspapers. And this year, I'm friendly with Todd Zalecki from MLB.com. He covers the Phillies. And he got in touch with me in the offseason. He said, hey, we're looking for a few more people. Would you be available this year to fill in when I'm away or when we need some people? And so that's how that came about, Nick. And I'm going to be covering for MLB.com the Red Sox series, which is Monday through Wednesday, and the Tigers series, which is the first weekend in August for MLB.com. And I'm looking forward to it. It's a chance to do something a little bit differently. When I cover most of the baseball that I've covered has been for the Associated Press, which I've really enjoyed and been very blessed and grateful to do. But this is a little bit more in depth, a little bit different. And it's really cool. Like one of the things about sports writing and that I've always loved, and, maybe it's, maybe it's a little bit of vanity, which, just being honest, but just seeing your byline, like that's kind of like the coolest thing. When you see your name above a story, you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. And it still feels that way. Like all these years, I still get excited for every game that I cover. I still put effort into the research and the prep and try and tell the best story that I can. And I still get a kick out of seeing my name on top of the story the next day, or it used to be the next day in newspapers, but 5 minutes later, when it's posted. So yeah, that was cool.
Absolutely. And then my second question here is just what is that SJU community like?
It's very unique, and it's probably very similar to the St. Joseph's Prep community. So you guys know what it's like. First of all, the Jesuits are extremely special. They had a great effect on my life. When I went to St. Joseph's, I grew in a way that was both academically but also spiritually, and got closer to God. And my favorite classes at St. Joseph's did not have anything to do with sports. My favorite class one of my favorite classes was the theology of marriage, taught by Father Vincent Genovese. And one of the reasons why I really liked the class is because the Jesuits challenge you, at least then, challenged me in a way to try and like really think and be my best, and really kind of use not just my mind, but like, just spiritually. So there's just that special quality at St. Joseph's University. And I did not go to St. Joseph's Prep, but I did visit there in the spring. I could feel that same special quality. And it's just people that are really, really kind. They care about each other. They care about the community. They want to give back to the community. They want to make the world a better place. And one of the interesting things in the book, tying this back to the book, was I interviewed Father Timothy Lannon, who was the president of St. Joseph's that year. It was his first year as a president. And one of the things he told me in the book, which I really hadn't thought about, but it resonated with me after he said it, was that the team the team that year kind of embodied what St. Joseph's is all about, is that the St. Joseph's quality of person and student and alum, they just try to do a little bit more, and they try and, kind of be maybe a little bigger than you would expect. And he said it's the reason why many companies always wanted to hire and recruit St. Joseph's students, because they knew they were going to get a quality worker and a quality individual. And I would say the same thing about St. Joseph's Prep. And just, I can tell from talking to you guys and from being there, there's just you almost can't put it into words. You almost can't put your finger on it, but there's just a special quality about both the Prep and St. Joseph's University.
Yeah, before we get to Ryan, I think that I just can say Ryan and I can both attest to that as Prep guys, and we try to give it off to Nick a little bit up there.
Oh, I'm sorry, Nick's a Carroll guy.
You're
Carroll
good. We tried about, I don't know, you can't count it on one hand the amount of times we tried to get him to come to the Prep. But yes, I think that Ryan and I can both say that the Jesuits have had impacts on our lives and our families. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of moving on, I want to dive into a little bit about your past when you were starting off. You talked about that you interviewed 90 people for this book. But I mean, that got me thinking, like, how did you create these connections from all the way back from when you were our age?
Yeah, like one of the things that I try and do, and I learned this from my mentor, a man named Jack Shore, who was a longtime sports writer for the Associated Press. And he kind of took me under his wing and really kind of showed me the ropes. I always try and treat people the way that I want to be treated. And I want to be someone that when I walk out of anywhere, when I walk out of a press box, but I'm just going to say anywhere, but we're talking about sports. So when I walk out of a press box, I want people to feel like that I was kind to them, that I was professional and courteous. And I hope that if I ever need to talk to somebody, whether it's just talking for a friendship or whether I request an interview, they'll know that, hey, like, I'm a good guy, they can trust me. And so for me, it's just about building relationships with people. And I'm not always perfect. Like, I made a lot of mistakes. I've probably burned friendships, burned bridges. So I don't want to come across angelic, but I try to treat people the way that I want to be treated. And I failed many times. But I would think and I would hope that sort of that helped me with the connections. And also, not for nothing, like, I'm not the youngest person ever either. So, I've been doing it for a long time. So I've met a lot of people that way. And but the St. Joseph's, having gone to St. Joseph's, I made a lot of connections that way, which And one of the reasons I thought I could pull off the book was because I had a lot of connections with people that were involved with that team. And I had a relationship with Phil Martelli that I thought he would be willing to cooperate. And he was unbelievably cooperative for the book. But, I think, and I tell my own kids this, I have three kids, 2 in high school, 1 in middle school. I said, you want to try and treat people the way you want to be treated, so that if you need something, like it could be a favor or whatever it may be, like people are going to be willing to help you out. You're not doing it. That kind of sounds selfish. You're not doing it for that reason. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do. But also, down the line, tomorrow, the next year, a decade, it could help you in some way. So I would like to think that was part of why I was able to interview so many people. And also, I was grateful the people that I interviewed would kind of say, hey, did you talk to this person? Like I mentioned, Jim Crowley. I had a relationship with the associate athletic director at St. Bonaventure, Steve, and his last name slipped my mind right now. But he said, hey, you should talk to Jim Crowley. He was at that game. So a lot of it was kind of like that as well.
Yeah. Makes sense. Sorgi.
My last question is, obviously we can see in the name, you cover all the Big 5 schools. And I think I know Ryan and I both saw you at the Palestra. I'm guessing Nick did too. The difference between covering the PCL playoffs at the Palestra and covering Penn at the Palestra, because I can say, I think, I don't know if Ryan or Nick have been to a Penn game there, but I went to a Penn-Harvard game there a couple years ago, and I was like, this is dead compared to a packed-out gym, whether it be on a Sunday afternoon or a Wednesday night. Can you talk about just the difference there in the energy level, in the entire just kind of vibe of the cathedral on those nights?
I'm getting chills, Anthony, just thinking about it. There's nothing like a sold-out Palestra, and you cannot put into words, as you guys know, the atmosphere unless you're there, because the sound of 8,700 people sounds like 87,000, and your adrenaline is your adrenaline's going, your excitement level's high, the whole building is rocking. And then the cool thing, like during the Catholic League playoffs, is you have the students behind the one bench and the other students behind the other bench. And if the opposing team is shooting in front of the opposition fans, it's a wild scene. And there were a lot of administrators that were working really, really hard that weekend to keep everybody in check. But what a fun atmosphere. And you're right. Penn has been down. So the atmospheres at the Palestra for Penn games have been sad, and totally different. Like, and I tell people, like, they've gone to the Palestra to see like a Penn game, for instance. And I say, well, you can't really experience the Palestra unless you are at a sold out Palestra. So come to the Philadelphia Catholic League semifinals and finals. And there was a time not too long ago where like Penn Princeton had the same atmosphere. And we'll see if Fran McCaffrey can get that back. I was at St. Joe's Villanova at the Palestra my freshman year, 1994. St. Joseph's upset a ranked Villanova team. It was just like the Philadelphia Catholic League playoffs. But you're right, the atmosphere is like night and day for like in the last few seasons, a Penn Ivy League game and a Philadelphia Catholic League. But there's nothing like being there. It's my favorite place to watch a sporting event. I've been to, I don't know, probably more than 1,000 venues, but nothing has ever topped the Palestra. It's unique and unbelievable.
No doubt.
Absolutely. My last question has got me smiling, sort of imagining all of that right there. You have Big 5 Hoops in your name here. If I'm not mistaken, that is your website, correct?
That is, yes.
Could you just sort of talk about, why you decided to make a website and what it entails?
Yeah, well, it's kind of a bit of a little backstory to it. I left journalism full-time in 2008 for a career in teaching. and I was still writing for the Associated Press on the side, but there was something missing, and I wanted to get back into covering sports more regularly, and I started a website called philahoops.com in 2010. And but I was still teaching at the time, and I did it for a couple years, 2-3 years, and I loved it, but it was just I couldn't keep up that pace of teaching, trying to cover games at night, trying to keep a website going. So I just sadly folded the site. But in 2023, I was like, wow, I have a little more time now. I'm still working in education, but in education publishing. I'm not in the classroom. I have a remote job. I work from home. My kids are a little older, more time. And I was like, wow. And there aren't that many people covering the Big Five. And so it's like, I'd love to start a website again, trying to cover the Big Five. And I started big5hoops.com. And so I do it really it's really a passion. I really do it. Quite honestly, I do it to practice my writing, to keep my connections, to keep working on my reporting and help build. This is going to sound vanity, and you guys know this is the way you need to do it today, but to kind of help build my brand and get my name out there. Like when I pitched the book to publishers, I said, I have a website, big5hoops.com. It's a leading voice of coverage of the Philadelphia Big Five. So I think that helped my credibility. Like I think if I didn't have that website, I don't know that a publisher would have taken me as seriously as they did. So it's been a blessing in that way. I'm not looking, if I could make money, make $1 million off it, I would, but I'm really doing it as a passion and also kind of as sort of a marketing arm, because I do hope to write more books, and I would like to use the website to help with my credibility for that as well, and kind of to promote the books and such. And as far as like what it takes to have a website, it's really not all that hard. If I can do it, probably anyone can do it. I just got the web address, and I have a person named Joe Fedorowicz who kind of helps me with a little bit of the technical side. It's just a WordPress platform, and mine's pretty basic. I don't really get into too many bells and whistles, but for me, it's what I want it to be. It's a place where I can write stories and cover the Big Five. So for me, it's really pretty much perfect.
And to bring it all full circle here, I don't know if you know, Sorgi and I, we co-run the PCL Sports Network. Where it's pretty self-explanatory, everything PCL. We have about, I don't know, Sorgi, 18, 15 people on our team just helping us cover everything PCL. What advice would you give to us, young journalists aspiring to get, somewhere on your level?
Yeah, I mean, the advice I would give is what you guys are doing already. I mean, you probably are figuring this out more than me. I mean, you have this show, which is what a great start. And I went through Anthony's page. I see all the people that he's interviewing. You guys are everywhere, out at games, getting your name out there. And my advice would be for anyone who wants to get into sports journalism is to start like this kind of a show or a podcast or both. Have some kind of website if you want to write, so you can kind of practice and get your name out there, and try and make as many connections as you can with people in the industry. And, ask people, hey, can I have advice? Or would you mind coming on my show? Or would you look over my story? And I think my experience is that most people will be gracious with their time, because they were in your shoes where they were trying to start out and needed people to help them. The tricky thing I think today is that there's a lot of competition for not a lot of jobs. And so you have to be really passionate about what you do, and you have to be really resilient. And if it's what you really want to do, like you're definitely go for it. You may not, you may face a lot of rejection. You have to be really resilient. I think that's really for anything. Like I got a lot of people that said no to me when I pitched the book. Everyone that said no to me just kind of fueled my fire a little more. And I said, I'm going to, this is not going to sound the right way, because I don't want it to sound spiteful, but in my head, I was kind of like, hey, I'm going to show those guys that I can write a book and it's going to be good. Not that like, I'm going to be like, hey, you're going to regret it, but it's just, it helped me overcome like the disappointment of somebody telling me no. Like no is a really hard word. And a lot of people will tell you no. And whatever way that works for you to overcome people telling you no, like if you have a passion, you can do it. And for me, that's kind of what this book is about. A lot of people will tell you too that like, hey, don't go into sports journalism. There's no money in it. There's no jobs. But like if you really, really want to be a sports journalist, like that's what's going to make you happy, then that's what you should pursue. Of course, you should listen to whatever your parents and your advisors say more than me. But I'm just saying, like, a lot of people are going to tell you no. I would say, like, if that's what you really love to do, then that's what you should do, because you're going to have a long working career and a long life. And, you know, you want to do what makes you happy. And if making a lot of money makes you happy, then maybe sports journalism isn't for you. And if job security makes you happy, then maybe sports journalism isn't for you. And I'm not saying that you can't make a lot of money and you can't have job security, but there are other fields that probably offer more of both. But if this is what you're passionate about and this is what you love to do, then go for it. And chances are you're going to be successful with that mindset.
Thank you.
Anything else, gents?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, well, Mr. Bracy, thank you for coming on. To everyone watching, make sure that you go buy the book. It's out there. Just look up A Soaring Season and you can find it. But thank you again for coming on, and hope to chat again soon.
First of all, Anthony, it's Aaron, and it's been a pleasure to be with you guys. You guys are doing a wonderful job. I really appreciate the time, and I'm happy to come back on any time to talk about the Big Five during the season. And I look forward to seeing you guys again at the Palestra in February, which is a date that I circle on my calendar. I can't wait to be back there.
Absolutely. Mr. Aaron Bracy, BigFiveHoops.com, here on the show with us.
So
Okay,
RTG.
gentlemen.
So RTG.
Yeah.
RTG, talk about Cheez-Its. I don't know
Okay,
why.
wait.
You wanna talk.
What?
I run the entire girls' sports department, RTG, but you didn't even mention me.
What do you mean?
That's fine. When you brought
For
up PCL
PCL
Sports
Sports
Network,
Yeah. What about it?
it's fine. Continue your Cheez-It talk.
What? What the hell? are you
Continue your
talking
Cheez-It
about?
talk.
He's saying that he should have gotten credit for helping.
Yeah, I want a little
do
bit
it
of
because
I was talking about the co-owners of the PCL.
I know, but I run the entire girls' sports department there.
Congratulations! I'm
Thanks,
talking about the
buddy.
PCL
I
Sports
appreciate it.
Network. All right,
So I'm talking about Cheez-Its.
you're talking about okay. All right.
Ryan, talk about Cheez-Its.
All right.
Before
Listen,
we lose all of our viewers, please talk about Cheez-Its.
do you know how incredible this is for the gluten-free community? There have been so many people that have been diagnosed with gluten intolerance or whatever that can't eat a damn Cheez-It or other stuff for that matter. We can't eat a goddamn soft pretzel. So the fact that we can get a Cheez-It, and I know it's gonna be just as good. Dom Schultz trying to tell me they're not good. I'm not gonna listen to him. But the fact that we can just have this to ourselves is just incredible. And I almost cried when I heard about this. There were almost tears of joy coming down my face. And I hope that this lets other companies know that we're here. And if you want to make gluten-free foods, you can. Because there are sad young men out there like me that need this stuff. Somebody send that to Philadelphia Soft Pretzel.
Round of applause.
Okay, gentlemen, the floor is yours. Nick, I will start with you to essentially just talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Oh boy. What do I want to talk about? I'm excited for the next episode.
I don't know when that will be, by the way. We don't have any interviews lined up for Monday.
I mean, I'll probably be on that. You can find me on Instagram at Nick Mash Media. I'm excited for football season and roll Pats.
Ryan Sullivan.
The Phillies don't need to trade for Cedric Mullins. I don't know what everybody's talking about here. And the fact that, why do we need Cedric Mullins. There literally is no reason. The guy is 30 years old on an expiring contract, and he's probably going to end up going to the Mets because Cohen will outbid God himself. I just don't understand the I don't understand the hype about it. There's no we have offensive firepower as it is. They just got to hit when it comes to the playoff time, unlike last season. And once again, he's on an expiring contract. We don't got time to worry about him in the offseason when we got somebody like Kyle Schwarber, who's winning All-Star Game MVP and hitting bombs like there's no tomorrow. And we got to worry about him in the offseason. We got to worry about pitching here. Who's going to be behind Wheeler and Nola next season. We got a bullpen that's been in shambles. For the past decade and a half. There are so many more things to worry about than Cedric Mullins. I feel like this is just another Luis Robert sort of thing where, it was rumored. And now Luis Robert is, not even playing that well this season. He's not living up to those expectations. I don't know why we would need a Cedric Mullins. Makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. I don't even know if it's a real thing. I don't even know if it's just a rumor, if it's actually like a real discussion the Phillies are having. If it is, then I am very, very, very upset about that. And yeah, is there anything else we need to talk about? What about that CEO and that HR guy that got caught at the Coldplay concert? That was nuts, dude.
That was nuts.
First off, why in God's name would you duck? Nobody would have looked into it if you didn't make it look so obvious. What a complete loser, man.
So, yeah, I mean, I just think that Coldplay, as described by the United Nations, is the only source of truth in these days that are so divisive.
What a bunch of losers. What a bunch of losers.
Coldplay is the truth.
I don't want to cut you off there, but Nick, do we have UFC predictions that we can get into? We have a lot. We have our Nick, Jason, and I's rankings are coming out Sunday. At our pound for pound rankings. I don't know if the site's going to change the pound for pound rankings, but I'm taking Holloway. Jason took Dustin.
I will also take Dustin.
Okay, I just don't think Holloway can afford to lose a third fight to Dustin because he already lost 3 fights to Volkanovski. And I don't know. I feel like the UFC wants Holloway to win this fight as well. And also, we've seen Holloway at 155. I don't think the weight's going to be a problem. But he can't get wrestled. His takedown defense has to be stellar. But I don't think Dustin's going to wrestle in this fight just because win or loss. I just think he wants to go out with a banger. So I don't think we're going to see wrestling. And I mean, obviously, Holloway, one of the most dynamic strikers we've ever seen, has never been knocked out before. I'm sorry, has not been knocked out before previous to Ilia Topuria. I think that you're going to see Holloway walk away with this one. I don't know.
Okay.
Paul Acosta also fighting. I think he gets wrecked. Holland, I guess Holland will win. I'm hoping Pitbull can finally get a win himself. And the other fight, Daniel Zellhuber. That was the guy who had the fight of the year last year. I love that dude. All right, I'm done.
Okay,
final question for you both. On a scale of 1 to 10, what do you rate the All-Star Game logo?
8.
I mean, yeah, it's pretty basic. I'd go 7. Also, that dude at the ESPYs was incredible. That was hilarious.
Dan Gillis?
Yeah, that was hilarious.
He's fabulous. He's one of the best.
Yeah, Gil. And I never recognized his name. I just recognized the face.
Have you not seen him before that?
No, I have seen him before that. I just never recognized the name, only the face.
Eastern PA guy, Bills fan, and a diehard Notre Dame fan as well. Go Irish. Okay, well, that's going to do it. We will be back at some point next week. I don't know if it's going to be Monday or not. We'll kind of see how things play out there. If there's any breaking news over the weekend, then there probably will be an episode Monday. If not, then probably not. But at the worst, we'll be back towards the end of the week. Have a great weekend, everyone. You can catch me. I'll be out and about the city tomorrow. I think I'm going to some festival. I don't know. I'm just going to go have a fun time. It will be a beautiful day. Have a great weekend. Enjoy watching the Philadelphia Phillies win some baseball games. And, yeah, go Prep.
Peace. Go Prep.
Roll Pats.